the will of the Lord will be accomplished through him. That was toward the end of that little longer than normal first reading of the prophet that talks about the suffering servant, the one who will take on lots of suffering and pain in order that people will receive the redemption of their sins. This is the mission of Jesus, to accomplish the will of the Lord. We need John's version of Jesus. It was the last of the 4 Gospels that were written, almost close to 100 AD. There was a lot more reflection about who Jesus was after the resurrection. It was more of an experience of him. And we get a sense of this by hearing the Passion narrative, in which, unlike the other 3 Gospels, Jesus is very much in charge of the whole process. 2 groups of people who seem to have more authority or power in the situation, you can tell pretty quick, really don't. That would be the Jewish people, particularly the Jewish authorities, particularly the chief priests, who are trying to accuse Jesus of blasphemy, which is punishable by death. And what do they say? We have no authority to execute him. So that's why they get Pilate involved. Pilate would seem to be the one that has the most control and authority in the situation. He's the Roman governor for the area. He has a lot of military force backing him up. And yet, as he goes through, he's somewhat intimidated by Jesus, but more so he's intimidated by the crowd. Because he knows that if a riot breaks out, it could even easily overwhelm even his small military force. And so he's not really necessarily in power or does exactly what he wants. It's only Jesus who is making all the choices and getting everything that is the will of the Lord. It's a great reminder for us that part of the redemption of our own sins is a redemption from the authority in our own life. That we are not in charge. That we really cannot control what's happening in our life. And in fact, the more that we try to take authority and control, usually the worse we make it. And it certainly does oftentimes end up having nothing to do with the will of the Lord. It's a great reminder that the mission of Jesus is to accomplish the will of the Lord in us. It's also helpful because many people come to a point in their life where they realize that things are completely out of control. But they may not know the Lord. They may not know the story of Jesus, who is in charge of all things in our lives, that provides the power and the authority that all need through his grace, through his suffering, that he's accomplished this mission for all people, for the many, for all. And that the more that we hear over and over again the story of Jesus' passion is a reminder of that story that needs to be shared with others who may not know Jesus himself. All we need to do is recognize Jesus having been perfected in his death and his resurrection, that he is the source of our redemption. This is what we heard at the second reading. And that all we need to do is obey him, to surrender, to submit our will to his. And once the will of the Lord is happening in our life, then many things can be accomplished in us. The translation at the very end, the very last words of Jesus from the cross in John's Gospel is translated in English, "It is finished." Perhaps a little bit better translation of that is, it is accomplished. This is the mission of Jesus, and he continues his Spirit to work in our lives and our hearts to accomplish his mission. And we give him thanks, honor, and praise. And as we do so, we know that it is in Jesus, the one who suffered for us, the one who was crucified on the cross, the one who was raised from the dead. The will of the Lord is accomplished through him.